There we go. Right. Good morning and welcome along to episode 20 of the Actors Toolkit podcast here, hosted by the O'Dare Academy. Today we are joined by another casting director. We haven't had a casting director for a while, and today it's the lovely Olissa Rogers. Olissa, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Jamie. How are you?
I am not bad at all. Not bad at all. The sun is out for a change. I was starting to think that spring wasn't coming, but the sun is out. Hopefully, that's the start of the good weather. So, do you want to tell our listeners, first of all, who is Olissa Rogers?
Oh gosh, I'm so bad at talking about myself, but I'm a casting director based in London. Started casting in 2008 in Germany, where I was born and raised, and then moved to London in 2016, where I started working for Jeremy Zimmermann, Kharmel Cochrane, Amy Hubbard, Theo Park, Fiona Weir, and now I've been my own boss since 2 years.
Fantastic. And what are what kind of things have you done in your career so far?
Mainly film and TV, a little bit of commercial. I now recently started doing theater as well, but focus was predominantly film and TV.
And is there anything you're exciting that you're working on at the moment?
Um, the Bush Theater, the Theater for the Bush, it's a great place. I'm looking forward to that. And then there's another project, a feature film, which I can't say too much about just yet.
That's normally the answer to that question. Yeah, I can't really talk about this. Everything's NDA'd, but that's nature of the industry. What's your opinion on how the industry has changed over the last couple of years? Obviously, we had the pandemic that we don't like to talk about, where everything shut down. But what's your opinion on how the industry's kind of changed since then?
I think it's just more accessible in terms of auditions because COVID did show that self-tapes and Zooms are possible and people don't have to necessarily be there in person for the first round, I'd say. So I do feel like it's more accessible for that reasons. And also it's being more open to all walks of world, all ethnicities, disabilities, any person from anywhere has more opportunities to audition and be cast. I feel even though it's a slow burner, there's some movement happening.
And I think it's quite a controversial subject at the moment with some of the A-listers talking out about self-tapes. Do you think that, what was your opinions of self-tapes? Do you think they're a good thing, bad thing? Do you think they take away from the experience of being in the room with a casting director? Or do you, like you say, do you think it opens it up a little bit more to be more accessible?
I think it opens it up a little bit more, but it's not something one should rely on. Like when it comes to narrowing down and casting the role, I do feel like it's essential for the person to be in the room and to meet and to see, do they vibe on the same level and how do they take direction? How's the interpersonal connection between director and actor or direct casting director, everybody involved in the project. So I do feel in person is essential to it. But I do believe that if some people can't afford to travel down to London because they're outside of in Manchester or something, it's helpful for them to do self-tapes. And then if narrowed down, then in person because they're aware they've been recalled, so they'll make the journey for it.
And do you find the process is moving more towards self-taping in the first instance and then onto in-person afterwards? Or is there still that sort of Zoom in the middle, do you think?
I don't feel like Zoom is there much more, but again, it depends on where the director is based as well. So sometimes first round could even be already in person, but it's a mixture, I believe. At least that's my personal experience.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of the people at the academy are starting out in their careers. They're just kind of leaving drama school or coming back to it after a break. What, in your opinion, makes the ideal self tape? What kind of things should actors be looking out for when it comes to self taping?
I think nowadays most actors know how to do a good self-tape just because we've been put into that situation due to COVID that they just had to learn how to do it. But those that aren't aware of what makes a good self-tape, I feel at the end of the day, I need to hear you and see you. Of course, it would be ideal for the actor to find a background that won't be too distracting and that the light, like the quality is good, but phones nowadays can do it. But it's just you can buy like a pop-up background for 30 pounds, just investing in yourself because the actor is their own product. So trying to get most best possible outcome is beneficial, but I'm not expecting it to be high definition, cinematic kind of thing. I just need to see you and understand you and not be distracted from any neon lights or something in the background. It's quite, yeah, I think that's what I would say. And at the end of the day, I need to believe it. It's at the end of the day, it's still the performance. Like no matter what the background is or if it's filming outside, as long as if I believe it and it's authentic, that's the reason why I would call the actor back, because at the end of the day, it's the performance that I look at.
Yeah, and obviously, like you touched on there, that everybody knows how to self-tape now. You know, there are so many videos out there. The likes of Spotlight have got guides on how to self-tape, so everyone's kind of got the basics down. Do you tend to find people then running away with self-tapes and just going, doing as much as they can, trying on different costumes, trying to make the production values really high, doing, multiple takes? Do you think it's kind of gone a little bit too far and taking away from the basics of what we're looking for, which is just the performance?
I mean, there's the odd one there, but most of the actors will understand that it's the performance and not making it a whole show.
Mm.
Um, and then that's just a case of communicating that to the actor. But it's rare that they go over the top, because it's also time, isn't it, to do all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
and do you find quite often, I've always wondered this, when you're watching tapes, obviously you've got an idea in your head of what you think the character is going to be or how the character's going to end up. Do you often find that by doing too much in the tape, people are going against what your vision actually is? Or have you had your vision changed because of tapes that you've seen?
I don't really, honestly don't really have a vision, because I try to keep it open, whereas it's more the director that have a vision, and I will try to follow their vision, but I'll be open to scoping other ideas. So personally, I'll always be open to how I see the character in certain ways. Like I don't really limit myself too much in terms of how I see them, because I want to be, yeah, I want to be able to make it accessible for any actor to tape for the part. So I'm trying to stay as open to getting people on tape. I do have to follow certain requirements if the director wants to see certain characteristics of it, but I will still find other people that might be able to show a different light to the character, to then show it to the director and change their mind, which has happened in the past, because they had such a narrow idea of what it could be, and then I showed them other things and like, oh, I didn't see that, but that makes so much sense. So personally, I try not to limit myself to a vision of how it should look like.
And how much of a difference does that kind of part of the process make to the project? Being able to work with the director and make suggestions and, kind of go against their vision in some ways or and change it around. How does that sort of help the process? And does it make it more of a creative process for you or?
More creative, but also more work.
Mhm. Gotcha.
Because I have to do more work. I have to see more tapes, but I'll happily do it. And it's not me going against the director's vision. It's me following their vision, but also showing them other ideas, what they could do of it. And then it's up to them whether they want to stick to their vision or they're open to actually it could work like this, because that's why we've been hired in the first place. So yes, cast the people that they want and they want to see in the role, but also to make sure that they are open-minded and we make it accessible for everybody, and we don't get stuck into a cliche of a firefighter needing to be male or a prison guard needing to be male. These things, just a simple basic, I'm just coming up with some example, but just being able to like broaden the horizon for everybody.
Yeah, and how much of your obviously we know that a casting is a creative job, but how much of the actual process when you're working with a director do they open themselves up to ideas? Obviously directors are coming in with ideas of A-listers that they would like, or people that can carry the project. if you as a casting director know that you can't get that person, or that it's very that's not going to be suitable for them, what's the process kind of like where when working on that together? That's a bit of a roundabout question, but I'm trying to get the idea that how do you let a director down by saying this actor isn't available, or maybe we could think about this one. How does that kind of process work?
You just have to be honest with them. To be honest, you just have to be honest and just manage their expectations. Um, Obviously we'll try to go out to certain people if it's realistic in our head, but if we don't feel like it's realistic, we will communicate that, and we will have reasons as to why it's not realistic. But if the script is really, really good and we believe in it, and we know this actor is looking for this kind of part at the moment, we'll always try, because at the end of the day, some of these actors, it's not for the money, it's really if they really love the role and you really have a good script, you can get anybody.
Yeah.
But you have to really find that one good script, because there are so many good scripts, but like an excellent script is not easy to find. And if you only have a good script, yeah, that's going to work, but you're not going to get a Christoph Waltz for that. And that's where you just have to limit certain expectations and like go a tier lower. But it's about just communicating and being nice about it. And so far, we've always had, or personally, I've never had any trouble when it came to that.
Mhm. And obviously, part of a casting director's job is trying to show the directors and the producers the new talent, the undiscovered talent that's out there, and getting them to take chances on people that aren't as well known. How hard do you find that nowadays with the industry being so populated? I mean, well, almost 100,000 people on Spotlight now. Do you find it harder to advocate for lesser known talent now that there's more of them?
No, if it's a role that I have personal freedom with and it doesn't have to be a familiar face, then they always are happy to take a chance.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Awesome. Okay. What do you think is the best way for actors to network with casting directors? That's obviously the big question that a lot of actors hate it. I get that, but it's a big part of the industry. So there's the old adage: it's about not about what you know, it's about who you know. How do actors in reality go about networking with casting directors,
Uh,
or do you have any don'ts when it comes to networking with casting directors?
I think it's a tricky one, because it's everybody wants to know the casting director. All these 100,000 actors want to be best friends with that casting director, which is just not possible.
Yeah.
And it's just about, being proactive, putting on your own shows, but also doing it for yourself, because that's something you love the arts, you love the creativity, and it's your love. If you have the love for it, I think you can get very far with it. But it's also being smart. Like, if you do put on you should put on your own show, create your own film, send it out to casting directors. It's also worth going to film festivals, small film festivals, short film festivals, whatever festivals there are out there, and to not only network with casting, but also producers and writers and directors. The writers will write you the part. The producers and directors have, at the end, most of the time, the final say. So it's best to be best friends with them. Sometimes we get an email from a producer saying, "Oh, I know this actor. Could you also put them on tape?" So are different ways of getting yourself seen more and heard more, and not only limiting yourself to casting necessarily, but also using different links and collaborating. You never know who knows who. The industry is so small. So it's also worth just talking to other head of departments, because you never know what can happen. And just, I think being proactive, sending emails in via your agent, or if you're self-represented yourself, but just doing it not in overflow, like not every month, because that won't get you anywhere. But it's just like just being smart of it, but also not putting too much pressure on yourself, I think, because most of the time things happen when you don't expect it. I mean, you just let room for it to come, basically.
Yeah. And you just touched on there on producers getting in touch. Can you demystify the casting process a little bit for us and talk us through the process of how it works for actors that are maybe new to the industry? So a producer comes to you with a project, or is maybe you have to pitch for that project. How does that kind of process work from the project being realized through to the actual casting of it?
Um, okay, they'll come to us with a project. And if is it fully financed or is it not fully financed?
Let's say it's fully financed, and this
Let's
is
say
just
it's
the
fully
casting.
financed, which is rare.
Oh yeah,
Um,
of course, yeah.
you would, yeah, the first thing I think they would do is we would, as a casting director, you would jump onto a call with the producer and director, gather ideas of what they see in the role, who they like, what's their wish list, what's their dream wish list. Like in an ideal world, who would they see in the parts that they want names for, if that's the case. We would then have a look at the names, come up with our own ideas after having read the script, trying to, like, again, manage their expectations if it's out of this world, and give them ideas that are just as good along the lines of what they've envisioned it to be. So you start out checking the avails with the agents, seeing if they're available. If available, who do you want to offer to? Starting out sending offers. Best case scenario, offers are accepted. We go into deal stage. We have the negotiations. Deals are closed. The actors are attached. And then when it comes to the roles where you don't necessarily have to go via a bigger name, we put out this breakdown on Spotlight. We wait for the suggestions to come in, and then we start out sending the tape requests. It depends on how many, in terms of how many people we see, it varies a lot. It depends on the casting director, how much tapes do they want to look through, how much time do they have to get these suggestions and tapes in. And then it's narrowing down the best people and then sending out a selection of those tapes to whoever needs to go, to producer, director, network, whoever is has the say in this project, because the hierarchy is always different. So you have to also have an idea of who do you email, who's CC'd, what goes to who. So it's having an idea, that's also being very specific and having that, yeah, just being very careful and sensible about that. Once you send out that short list, you will have feedback from the director, producer, whoever has the say in terms of, yes, we would like to recall these people. Sometimes if it's just a line, they'll just book them from the spot. And then it goes into in-person auditions or Zoom, which I haven't done Zoom auditions in a very long time. So it's mostly in-person auditions. And then once that has been done, there can be chemistry read auditions depending on the project. If not, mostly there's one or two callbacks. Ideally, just one callback, and then the roles are pretty much set in stone. And then it just, again, offering the role, sending out the details, negotiating, closing the deal, and then everything is in the hands of the producer, and the casting director can step back.
And that's where your job ends. And I know you've been casting some short films recently. Let's take an average short film, not an average short film, but a regular short film. You're putting it out on Spotlight for some of the smaller roles. How many applications are you likely to get, do you reckon? If you're putting it out to all agents?
At least 300 upwards, at least, but it depends on what I'm looking for. Like, I have sometimes specific briefs, like somebody who can speak Cantonese, so it will limit it down
Yeah,
because there's not as many Cantonese speaking people out there, or Kiribati, Yorkshire nuns, all
yeah.
of those kind of more rare briefs. So
And when a rare brief like that comes through, do you find yourself doing quite a lot of searching on
yeah,
Spotlight? Yeah, yeah.
I need to then go to casting, like social media, or reach out to organizations and communities, theaters, to find that specific um role. If it's very, very specific, sometimes you have to go wide, broad in your search, and it's necessarily not an actor. but it can be somebody who's very talented and is just somebody, a gem that needs to be polished.
Yeah. And when you're doing those searches on Spotlight, what are the main things that you tend to end up searching? Obviously you've got your search terms, but what are the sort of main things that come up? And perhaps are there anything that actors are missing out on their Spotlight? Do you have anything that you look for that's never there, or you get frustrated when it's not there? What kind of things are actors missing out? I know from an agent's point of view, the kind of things I notice actors missing out, but from casting, when you're doing a lot of searches, what kind of things?
It's not much, to be honest. It's the odd one there and here. Like if there's an accent that they miss that they actually can do that's not on Spotlight, then it will fall through the how do you say it? Fall through
All through
the
the cracks.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, or maybe a location like that if they have several bases. I feel like that's become better. But the only thing that I noticed now was that some of the actors that I found out could do a certain accent, it wasn't on their Spotlight, hence they didn't pop up for me. And I only found that out via speaking to the agent. But that was rare. Other than that, I don't feel like there hasn't been nothing else I can think of, to be honest, right now from the top of my head.
Well, that's good then. That means that all the advice out there is working. People are actually getting their Spotlight profiles right, which is great.
Yeah.
Next, can you think of in fact, what was your career highlight and why? What's the best thing that's happened in your career and why was it so memorable?
Well, as of last week, it's a new highlight that I received an Emmy nomination, but
I know. Congratulations for African Queens. Is that correct?
yes,
That's
oh,
amazing.
that's my new highlight. If you would have asked me a week ago, it would have been me casting Ted Lasso because it was just such a fun project, and the actors are just beautiful, kind, humble people in real life as well. And it was just it was a chaotic process because it was also America involved, and it's the first season, and people don't know what they're doing necessarily because it's just like, the pilot and everything. Despite all of the chaos that is normal, it was just such a wonderful project because it was also just fun. It's a comedy, and I think that was my highlight. And I also we didn't expect that kind of success. I think when we first started it with Theo, who was the casting director on it, but then having all the nominations and the feedback, that I think that really was a highlight for me. If yeah, and as of now, it's the nomination.
Yeah, exactly. I know, and that's crazy good. We're so proud of you for that. So well done. Um, can you remember any memorable auditions that you've had, and why were they memorable? Was there something that maybe happened in an audition, or were you just completely blown away by somebody you didn't expect, or was there a memorable one that you can remember?
I think, well, there are a few memorable ones where it's just like the person comes in and it's them.
Mhm.
There's no question, like no matter how many more people you see, you just know they're gonna get the part, and then it confirms that they did get the part because of what they did. It's just like magic they create in the room. And I think I know I always mention this audition. It's Phil Dunster who came in to read for Jamie Tart in Ted Lasso.
Mhm.
And he just found the comedy. He made me laugh so much, but he was also quite confident, and he had the guts to call me out on my pronunciation because it's not really my English is my mother tongue, but it's more German that I grew up with. So I pronounced, I think Bellend or Bellend. I just pronounced it wrong, and he just laughed at me. And he was the first person that called me out. None of the other actors before told me that I was saying it the wrong way because I didn't even knew that much what it meant. But he was just so, yeah, he just owned it. But he was just also such a lovely human being, and he's just brilliant. And when he did it, I really knew he's gonna get it, and I was just rooting for him the whole way, and he got it.
That must just be the best feeling, watching someone's performance and thinking, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
knowing it's going to be them. Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's been brilliant. I've got a couple of more questions. If you could give all actors one piece of advice, what would it be? What would be, of all the advice out there, what would be the one thing that you want to tell actors?
I think just don't put too much pressure on yourself and believe that everything's possible. Um, if it's one piece of advice, yeah, I'll just keep it at that.
Yeah, no, that is great advice. Yeah. And the last question we always ask everybody on the podcast, if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be and why?
I would change the industry. I think just to, it's a tough one. Mm, I think I would wish for everybody to be kind and human and treat everybody equal as equals rather than making it, because it's a very much ego-based industry.
Mhm.
Uh, Obviously, there are good people in the industry, but you also have those people that are a little bit more selfish. So I just wish everybody was kind and would treat each other and equal as equals, which will never happen, but that's what I would change. I think just because we all deserve to be here, because we all share the same passion, and everybody deserves to be in this space, no matter where you are, where you come from. Yeah.
Great answer. Fantastic. Well, Alyssa, that's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for talking to us. We will catch you again soon.
Great. Thank you for having me, Jamie.